Welcome to The Explainer. So who really owns Spider-Man? You'd think the answer is simple, right? Well, it's actually at the heart of this massive billion-dollar legal battle pitting the families of comic book legends against the corporate giant that turned their creations into a global empire.
So here's where it gets crazy. It all kicked off when Marvel, which, is owned by Disney, went ahead and filed a whole bunch of lawsuits against the families of the creators, people like Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, and Gene Colan. Their endgame? To lock down 100% ownership of these characters forever.
And look, this is way more than just some dusty legal case. We're talking about a huge fundamental clash over legacy, over intellectual property, and really over the soul of the characters who have defined pop culture for more than 50 years.
I mean, the list of characters at stake here is just wow. We're talking Iron Man, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, basically the A-listers who built the modern Marvel we know and love. And think about it, if the company loses, they might have to share the keys to the kingdom and a big chunk of the profits in just a few years.
So why is this fight so intense? Well, like a lot of things, you just gotta follow the money. Because these aren't just drawings on a page anymore. They're the foundation of a global, multi-billion-dollar empire.
Okay, get ready for this number. The Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's one of the biggest media franchises of all time. And its total revenue so far? An absolutely mind-boggling $29 billion.
And this is what I find so interesting. The whole MCU is a giant, but look at Spider-Man. On his own, as a single franchise, he's pulled in almost as much cash. It just goes to show you, each of these heroes isn't just a piece of the puzzle. They're a multi-billion-dollar powerhouse all by themselves.
So where does all that cash end up? Well, these characters have become the literal engine for the Walt Disney Company. Just look at their 2023 numbers. Disney pulled in almost $89 billion in total revenue, and a huge part of that comes from entertainment and theme parks, places where these heroes are front and center.
All right, so you've got billions of dollars hanging in the balance. The entire legal throwdown really boils down to this one central question in copyright law. Who was the actual author?
Okay, so on one side, you have the creators' families. They're using a legal tool called the termination right. Basically, U.S. law says that after a certain number of years, creators or their families can get a second bite at the apple, a chance to reclaim the rights to their own work.
But Marvel has a counterargument, and their entire case hangs on these three little words: work for hire. They're saying, hey, these guys weren't independent visionaries, they were our employees, paid to do a job. And if a court agrees with that, poof, the company is considered the author from the very beginning, and those termination rights, they just don't apply at all.
So what you have here are two totally different versions of reality. Was this an act of personal, creative genius that was just licensed out? Or was it a corporate assignment where the company paying the bills owned it from day one? The answer to that question is literally worth billions.
You know, this whole creator versus corporation thing, it's not a new fight, not by a long shot. In fact, its roots run deep, all the way back to the early days of the comic book industry.
Most of the characters we're talking about were created back in the 60s, during what's known as the Silver Age of comics, and a lot of them were made using something called the Marvel Method. This meant artists like Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko were basically co-plotting the stories, but they were often treated like freelancers. They got a paycheck, sure, but not contracts that gave them any ownership or a slice of the massive profits to come.
And get this, the whole business model of turning these characters into money-printing machines, who perfected that? The very company that owns Marvel today. You have to go back to the 1930s, when Walt Disney figured out he could license Mickey Mouse for, well, everything. That became the blueprint for the entire industry.
And this, right here, really gets to the core of the whole issue. Think about this. Back in 1978, Marlon Brando got paid a reported $12 million for Superman, a huge sum for the time. But fast forward to today, and the Spider-Man franchise by itself has made over $7 billion for the studio. That huge, staggering gap between what the talent got paid up front and the near-endless river of cash the corporation gets, that's why we're even talking about this.
And these legal battles, man, they're incredibly complicated and the results can be really unpredictable. I mean, what seems like a slam dunk often isn't.
For instance, there was this famous case in France where a court decided that the second panda logo here didn't infringe on the super famous WWF logo. It's a perfect example of how judges can make these really fine-grained distinctions. The exact same kind of thing that could decide this whole Marvel case.
So, after all that, the history, the law, the billions of dollars, it all really comes down to one big, almost philosophical question.
So, where do we, as a society, draw that line? What's more important? Is it the creator's initial spark of genius? Or is it the corporation's decades of investment in marketing that turned that spark into a global phenomenon? Honestly, there's no easy answer here.
But at the end of the day, for the millions of us who are fans, these heroes mean something more than what's on a corporate balance sheet. You know, as one fan on Reddit put it, kind of channeling a famous line from the movies, even without the money or the suit, Tony is still Iron Man. And that really leaves you wondering, doesn't it? Who truly owns a hero? The person who dreamed them up, the company that sells them, or the culture that embraces them and gives them meaning?